want is someone who's absolutely calm, never breaks under pressure, and knows exactly what you want.
They're all handmade. They're the finest built cars in the world. They have the highest quality systems and components and materials.
Motoring 92 is brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, one tough motor oil.
Hello everybody, welcome to Motoring 92 and welcome to Southern California. You know, when you come to California and talk to the natives, they'll tell you there is very little not to love about living here. The ocean, the beaches, the movie stars, and yes, the cars. It's no secret that Californians have had a long love affair with the automobile. In fact, in Los Angeles County alone, there are over 7 million vehicles and over 600 miles of freeway, and that is still expanding. Well, we're going to begin this week by talking to a Californian whose love for the automobile was so great, he decided to build his own. Since he can remember, Gerald Weigart has had a passion for cars and fighter jets. Not blessed with Top Gun eyesight, Weigart decided to use his automotive background to fulfill his other dream, to build his own automobile. Ignoring the failed attempts of DeLorean and Bricklin, Weigart founded Vector Aeromotive Corporation in 1971. His goal, to produce a four-wheeled fighter plane for the street, and it was to be known as the Vector.
The idea was to build something that was a challenge to Ferrari and Lamborghini, and something that would be a challenge to a person's instinct or desire to buy foreign, to buy something not built in America, but something built in Europe. And I thought there should be an alternative, an American alternative to those cars. And that's why I did what I did. It was kind of generated by patriotism. I always wanted to be a fighter pilot, but my eyesight was not naturally good enough. I wore contacts, and so I translated my interest in aircraft to the idea when I started Vector as aircraft for the street, to build an advanced tactical fighter for the street, for the guy that could afford it. As we move along, this is a very complicated, complex vehicle to manufacture.
2 pre-sold Vectors are produced each month. The 7 on the road today around the world sold for $283,000. Today, the price tag is $437,000.
The engine is a 6-liter all-aluminum V8. It's twin turbocharged and fuel injected. What I'd like to do is walk you across the shop here, and I'll show you what a finished version of the engine looks like when it's all together. Both of these cars are ready for shipment. One of them is going to England. The other one is going to Kansas City. This is what a finished engine package looks like. What you see here are dual intercoolers, dual wastegates, twin turbochargers. It's all direct port injected. It's 366 cubic inches, and the engines get dyno tested to over 600 horsepower. On numerous occasions, we've dyno tested all the way up to like 730 horsepower. They put out that horsepower at about 5,700 RPM, and at 4,800 RPM, they put out about 720 foot-pounds of torque. The vehicle has a tilt wheel with a large airbag. All aircraft circuit breakers. The panel is machined out of solid billet the way it is in a military fighter aircraft. Every one of these push buttons in the dash are right out of the cockpit of an F-117. Same vendor, same supplier, same mil-spec numbers. All of the human engineering is right where your finger can reach everything.
Well, I've been with him most of the time that he's been at it, and you know, it takes a lot of determination. I mean, I've gone through hardships that I think most people would have given up, you know, 4 times at least during the processes and some of the hard times that we went through. You know, it's really a credit to him to have stuck with it as long as he has. I mean, it's a dream that we made real.
This is a new Vector codenamed WX9. It'll have a formal name, but we haven't designated it yet. And the idea is to build the body in a one-piece mold with the exception of doors and openings and lids and so on, and bumper areas. And it'll be a carbon fiber body, very lightweight. In fact, the whole body might not weigh more than 100 pounds. And the chassis is underneath here. The plug was built over the chassis, so everything fits the actual structure of the vehicle. And we're building this car in record time relative to the design, the body engineering, and building the initial parts. So I'm looking forward to seeing, the completed body parts go over to the shop where we have the chassis for this new car and seeing the thing assembled over the next 30 days. I don't intend for this venture to be a failure, and I think anybody that's watched the history of Vector or the history of Gerald Weigert knows that, I'm a very determined individual, and I intend for this venture to be a winner. The idea isn't to take second place to anyone in reference to performance or quality of manufacture or technological substance. And this car has led the designers and engineers at other companies to be more aggressive and more progressive because this car has been a benchmark kind of a vehicle.
A quick run around the safety items found adjustable seatbelt anchors, a driver's side airbag, and of course the anti-lock brakes. Given today's climate where insurance companies use the least little excuse to inflate your premium, enough cannot be said about anti-lock brakes.
Test Drive with Graham Fletcher.
This week on Test Drive, we look at the 1992 Honda Civic, a car that has been embroiled in a very controversial subject. The Americans say that the car does not have enough North American content to allow it to qualify for duty-free import into the US. Both Honda Canada and the Canadian government say it does. Later on, we'll give you the facts and allow you to decide for yourself.
The 92 Civic is the fifth generation enjoying its 20th model year for sales, and as with each of the preceding generations, the changes to the new car are radical to say the least. The new aero styling still follows the wedge theme, featuring a low nose and high rear end. The new sheet metal covers an interior that rivals the 86 through 89 Accord models for size. The increase in interior volume is best appreciated in the rear, where more legroom is provided. The back seat will accommodate 2 adults in reasonable comfort, however 3 would feel like sardines in a can.
With any small car, space is always a premium. In this car, the inclusion of a sunroof really cuts into the amount of headroom available. And the second thing is that even with the tilt steering wheel fully up, there isn't a great deal of room between your thighs and the bottom of the wheel.
Up front, the passengers are treated to a high level of comfort. From the driver's perspective, the large analog gauges present a clean, uncluttered and very legible view of all pertinent information. Reaching and operating all primary driver controls is easy. This holds true from the power window controls through the cruise controls to the centrally mounted radio and heater controls. The view forward is panoramic thanks to the large greenhouse and slim A and B pillars. The view to the rear is not so good because the C pillars are very large and rather chunky, introducing small blind spots. The radio in the test car was a real disappointment. First of all, there were no rear speakers. Now they are an option, I have no doubt, but the real kicker was the level of interference. It made most AM stations all but impossible to listen to.
This week on Test Drive, we're not going to have the usual skid pad test because, as you can see, the weather is just not cooperating. However, what we are going to do is to demonstrate why I think anti-lock brakes are such a significant safety item.
We're going to set up a few pylons and do an accident avoidance maneuver. Now in the first demonstration I'm going to come in, brake. With the ABS system working, we'll be able to steer around the pylons I've set up. In the second demonstration I'm going to simulate the rear brakes locking in mid-corner, and as you'll see there is a dramatic difference in the two demonstrations. Now while that's a simple demonstration of how well ABS works, it does serve to show the true benefit. In real life you're not trying to avoid these things, you're trying to avoid pedestrians and perhaps other vehicles. If the ABS system works just once, the ABS option has paid for itself right there. This latest Civic still features Honda's advanced double wishbone suspension. It is on the firm side despite the extended travel designed into the setup. Some refinements to the design have managed to reduce the amount of toe variation to almost nil. The benefit of this is immediately obvious when you begin to use the potent new engine found under the hood. The EXV features a 1.6-litre 16-valve single overhead cam engine, complete with electronic fuel injection and variable valve timing. The latter works along the same lines as the system found in the Acura NSX. This level of technology culminates in 125 horses and 106 pounds-feet of torque. Acceleration is quick, averaging a scant 9 seconds to reach the 100k mark. Above the 4,500 RPM mark, the engine has a tendency to get a little noisy, especially as you near the red line. My pet peeve on the Honda Civic has to do with the trunk. Now they've employed some clever hinges to get the deck lid up and out of the way. The problem is the access to the trunk is very small. Now this camera bag is not a particularly big piece of luggage, but as you can see it effectively covers the entire opening, making it difficult to retrieve. Anyway, now let's go to the scoreboard for a rundown on the 1992 Honda Civic. For a small and relatively inexpensive car, the Civic range features a suspension design that is a cut above the rest. It successfully combines good handling characteristics with a comfortable, compliant ride. The larger 1.6-litre engine found in EXV and SI models delivers a powerful 125 horse punch. During acceleration tests, we achieved the 100k mark in just under 9 seconds. The addition of Honda's 6th generation anti-lock system to the Civic range is a welcome one. While we could not conduct the usual brake tests, the stops always felt sure and short. The increased interior room, light airy feel and comfortable ride make the Civic one of the better buys in this category. The advanced engine design and compact nature of the Civic combine to return an average fuel consumption of just 8.3 litres per 100 kilometres or 34 miles per gallon. High and low figures were 38 mpg and 29 miles per gallon respectively. There are lots of cars that offer airbags and there are lots of cars that offer anti-lock brakes, but only a few like the new Civic offer both, albeit at a price.
You know, the so-called fitness craze got its beginnings out here in Southern California, and as you can see, it is still going strong. Well, it's now time to leave California and join another fitness buff, Bill Gardner, in the garage.
You know, replacing a heater core on one of today's cars is just about my least favorite job. You're laying on the floor that's usually soaking wet from the heater core leak or maybe from somebody's boots in the wintertime. You're jammed up underneath that dash. In a lot of cases, you're just working by feel. Not the nicest job, and we certainly can't illustrate what we want to do today, so we're going to move to a car inside the shop that's just a little bit easier to see things. Here's a car where we can see all the components of the heater system very easily. Now, at this end of the heater plenum, we've got the 12-volt fan motor that moves the air around this system, the heater system. We can see the connection for that blower motor, and there's the ground for that blower motor we've already removed. Over here we can see the resistor pack 3-bladed unit, one blade for each of the fan speeds in this car. This reduces the voltage to the blower for those low speeds. Now, here we can see a control cable coming from the interior of the car and a control lever that moves a damper inside this heater plenum. Over here we've got the inlet and outlet heater hoses. I've already removed the clamps to get it off easily, and I've removed all but one screw on this heater plenum so we can remove this unit quite easily and see inside it. Now I'm going to pull it out and turn it over. You can see what's in here. At this end we've got the squirrel cage or fan assembly that's on the nose of that blower motor. This moves the air around the system, and we can see the inside of that damper. The door we talked about, it diverts air around this system, and we can see the heater core itself, this unit right here. This receives the hot coolant from the engine and exchanges heat into the interior of the car. Now I've already removed the strap that holds this in so that we can get it out quickly and turn it over. There's the inlet port and outlet port, and you can see that air can pass through this unit quite easily and exchange heat. Now down at the bottom we can see that there's some staining on this heater core along the bottom and up this side, and this is the most likely problem that you would replace a heater core for, is a leak. If you see green antifreeze coolant mixture dripping inside the interior of the car, for sure this unit's gone. If your windows are steaming up or fogging up and there's a foul smell in the car, that's another good indication that you've got a slight leak in the heater core and you're going to have to replace it. This is an $80 to $90 component on most cars, and in most cases you're going to have a mechanic install that. It doesn't come out quite as easily as it does on this car. But one of the first things to check when you have a performance problem with the system, you're just not getting enough heat or sufficient heat, is check at the radiator. Make sure that the coolant is full. If the coolant level is low, you won't get proper heat out of the heater because the heater core will be partially drained. Make sure that your engine thermostat is in good shape. You can quickly check that by starting the engine on a cold start and looking in the radiator core. If you see coolant circulation in the radiator during the first several minutes of engine operation, your thermostat is defective. It's a quick, easy part, inexpensive part to replace. If you're not moving any air around in this system, in other words, if you can't hear that blower roaring when you turn the high speed on, look for an electrical connection problem somewhere around here. Maybe corroded blades or connections on this resistor, the blade on the heater fan itself, or maybe the ground connection. They're all apt to corrode because most of them are out under the hood here where they're exposed to the elements. So check those things first. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 92.
If you have any story ideas or suggestions, drop us a line at Motoring 92, Post Office Box 284, Station J, Toronto, Ontario, M4J 4Y1.
You know, some of the more popular TV programs these days involve the police, good guy chasing bad guy. We used to call them cops and robber movies. Well, Steve Grant has a story about a leading Canadian race car driver who became a bad guy just for the camera.
What would a television action show be without a good old-fashioned chase? And that's where we find ourselves this week on the set of Top Cops, quite a popular television show. Now, when you see them shoot one of these chase scenes, it's amazing just how much work is involved, right down to the fact that we're supposed to be in Florida. But what's really unique about this scene is one of the stunt drivers. In fact, it was in Florida when we last caught up with our bad guy. This is what Jeremy Dale does best, racing for the Nissan factory team. But today, he's a drug dealer. Well, it's all pretend, of course.
Well, I'm basically doubling for an actor who plays a bad guy, and he's stolen some few things from these fellows in this limousine, and so I'm trying to get away from him, and so I'm doing some stunt doubling and doing some driving.
This is a chase sequence that happened in Miami. It's a true story. Happened to a cop called Freddie Williams, and what happened was there was a drug bust. $40,000 worth of cocaine was stolen from one drug dealer, and 4 others followed him, chasing him, and they wanted their coke back. And they chased through a shopping mall and then went into a suburban area where the top cop saw them firing guns, and he pursued them to the point where he could catch up with the gun guys and ended up capturing them.
All right, Ernie's back. So here we go. Let's go into first positions. We're going to shoot this.
Stand by the cameras, please.
Yeah, I think you might be. Camera. And action.
Really what you want is someone who's absolutely calm, never breaks under pressure, and knows exactly what you want, can understand, has a good visual eye also, and can understand what's going to work for cameras. So when they're doing their stunt, they know exactly what you want and they're never going to panic. Once I've locked it in, once I've said that's the take to memorize, don't do it any better, don't do it any worse, just keep sticking with that one exactly, because that's what I have to match every time when I get in for my coverage.
Yeah, so they say, you know, we're the bad guys. The bad guys.
Well, you guys get quite a ride when you're out there. It looks like fun, but what's holding you in when you're hanging out the window?
Actually, we're strapped into the car quite safely. I have a harness on underneath me pants, and I'm strapped to the anchor belt for the seat belt.
You know, you're not going to jeopardize the vehicle or yourself. You know, so you just don't do anything unless you think it through and you make sure it's done safely.
Mr. Kinsey, you're wanted on set.
I'll be right back with Kenzie's Corner in a moment. Okay, Oliver, what's my motivation on this now?
Kenzie's Corner with Jim Kenzie.
The San Fernando Valley. That's beautiful downtown Burbank. Universal Studios is just to my right. Disney, Warner Brothers. And behind these hills, well, that's Hollywood. What's this got to do with automobiles? Well, simply that movies and motor cars both have their roots right here in coastal Southern California. In the 1920s, when the bright, beautiful people came out here to make the movies that we know and love, they also demanded bright and beautiful automobiles. Sure, the cars were made in Detroit, but the styling trends were set here. The urban sprawl known as Los Angeles was also the first major metropolitan area that really came to grips with the automobile. Freeways, drive-in movies, even drive-in churches gave Angelenos unprecedented freedom and mobility. But it's here, too, where the dark side of the automobile first reared its ugly head. Traffic congestion and, of course, the infamous smog all started right here. But it's also here where the impetus to solve these problems has been generated, to the benefit, I hope, of us all. Los Angeles was also where Japanese cars got their first start, and today over half the automobiles sold in this part of the world have Japanese brand names. And those movie studios, well, they've all been purchased by the Japanese, too. So for trends in automobiles and in movies, come here to California. I'm Jim Kenzie.
Well, you can't come to Hollywood, California without taking a stroll along Hollywood Boulevard's Walk of Fame. Now, they tell me there are more than 1,800 celebrities with their names embedded in stars along this sidewalk. Now, there are some stars that are still vacant. We have an idea for a new star. Have a look down here and see what you think. Yes? No? Well, either way, I've got to do what any good tourist would do, and that is take a picture. Well, that's it for now, but we'll see you next week for more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
Motoring 92 has been brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, one tough motor oil.